The Great Hall of the Alliance Academy was filled with excitement. Hundreds of humans and aliens stood together, waiting for the moment that would decide their future. The hall itself was a massive dome, with bright lights shining down from above. The walls were covered with banners from different planets, each representing a species that had joined the Great Intergalactic Alliance. Daniel stood among the humans, his hands in his pockets, looking calm but focused. He was just an ordinary young man, not the strongest, not the fastest, but he had something special. He always followed his heart. Today was the day of the bonding, a ceremony where humans and aliens chose their partners. These pairs would go on a mysterious mission together, one that would test their skills and courage. No one knew what the mission was exactly, only that it was important. The selection process was simple. Humans had to choose an alien partner. Once the choice was made, it could not be changed. Everyone expected the strongest humans to pick the most powerful aliens, those with great strength or advanced abilities. It was a strategy to ensure success. The hall grew silent as the ceremony began. One by one, humans stepped forward, pointing to their chosen partners. Cheers erupted as strong warriors paired with elite fighters. It was no surprise. These were the teams expected to win. Then it was Daniel's turn. He walked to the front of the hall, looking at the rows of aliens waiting to be chosen. Some stood tall with proud expressions, their bodies covered in armor-like skin or glowing markings. Others had sharp eyes, their confidence clear. But Daniel ignored them. Instead, his gaze fell on Mira. She stood at the edge of the group, barely noticeable. Mira belonged to the Valen race, known for their intelligence rather than their strength. Her skin had a faint silver hue, and her large, deep blue eyes held a quiet curiosity. Unlike the others, she didn't try to make herself look impressive. She just stood there, as if expecting to be overlooked. Daniel pointed at her. Gasps filled the room. Mira's eyes widened in shock. She looked around, thinking there must be some mistake. But Daniel's hand was steady. He had chosen her. One of the instructors, an older alien with golden markings on his skin, stepped forward. His expression was unreadable. "Are you sure, human? You may choose only once." Daniel nodded. "I'm sure." Mira hesitated before stepping forward. She seemed unsure, almost nervous. When she reached Daniel, she looked at him carefully, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you choose me?" Daniel smiled, his eyes warm but unreadable. "Because I see something special in you." Mira didn't know what to say. No one had ever called her special before. She wasn't a warrior. She wasn't fast or strong. In the past, people had often ignored her during training sessions, assuming she was too weak to be useful. The murmurs around the hall continued. Some whispered that Daniel had made a foolish choice. Others chuckled, shaking their heads. Even Mira's own kind looked surprised. But the decision was final. The instructor raised his hand for silence. "The bonding is complete. From this moment on, you are a team. You will train together, struggle together, and face the unknown together." With that, the ceremony ended, and the newly formed pairs left the Great Hall, heading toward their assigned quarters. As they walked through the wide corridors of the academy, Mira finally found her voice. "You could have picked someone stronger," she said quietly. Daniel glanced at her, amused. "And you could have refused." Mira hesitated. That was true. If she had really wanted, she could have stepped back, forcing Daniel to choose someone else. But for some reason, she hadn't. She frowned slightly. "You don't even know me." "I don't," Daniel admitted, his tone casual. "But I trust my instincts." Mira studied him for a moment. He didn't seem like the other humans, those who only cared about strength or reputation. He looked relaxed, as if he didn't mind what others thought of his choice. She sighed. "I don't know if I'll be useful to you." Daniel shrugged. "Then we'll find out together." Mira didn't argue, but she still felt uncertain. She had never been anyone's first choice before. Why now? That night, as Mira lay in her new quarters, she stared at the ceiling. She had spent years believing she wasn't strong enough to stand out, but for the first time, someone had seen something in her. She wasn't sure if Daniel had made a mistake, but something inside her whispered that this was just the beginning, and she wanted to find out why. The next morning, the academy was alive with activity. The newly formed teams gathered in the main training area, a vast open field surrounded by tall metal walls. The sky above was a bright shade of blue, with two suns shining down on the recruits. Mira stood beside Daniel, shifting uncomfortably. She still didn't understand why he had chosen her. Around them, other teams looked strong and confident. Powerful alien warriors stood next to experienced human fighters, ready for anything. Daniel, however, looked completely relaxed. He stretched his arms and gave Mira a small smile. Ready for our first trial? Mira frowned. What if I slow you down? Daniel tilted his head. Then I'll match your pace. Before Mira could respond, an instructor stepped forward. He was a tall, muscular human with a scar on his cheek. His voice boomed across the field. Welcome to your first trial. Today, you will go through an obstacle run, a test of teamwork, speed, and strategy. You must reach the other side of the training field by crossing several challenges. If one of you fails, your team fails. Mira's heart sank. This was exactly what she feared, something that required physical skill. The instructor continued. The course includes high walls, deep trenches, energy barriers, and shifting platforms. The goal is not just to be the fastest, but to work together. Mira glanced at the other teams. Many were already discussing strategies. Some aliens had strong wings, others had extra limbs, and a few had natural armor. Mira had nothing. She sighed. You really should have chosen someone else. Daniel chuckled. Too late now. Before Mira could argue, the signal sounded. The trial had begun. The first challenge. The wall. The first obstacle was a massive wall, too high to jump over. Many teams worked quickly. Some aliens lifted their human partners, while others climbed with ease. Daniel turned to Mira. I can help you up. Mira hesitated. Before she could protest, Daniel knelt down, offering his hands as a step. Mira took a deep breath and placed her foot in his grip. With a quick push, Daniel lifted her up, and she grabbed the top of the wall. With effort, she pulled herself over. She expected Daniel to struggle, but he jumped up, grabbed the ledge, and pulled himself over with surprising ease. Mira blinked. You're stronger than you look. Daniel grinned. Thanks. Let's keep going. The second challenge. The trench. The next obstacle was a deep trench filled with slippery mud. The teams had to cross without falling. Mira watched as others used their strength to leap across. Some aliens used their extra limbs to climb the walls. She and Daniel had no such advantage. I don't think I can jump that far, Mira admitted. Daniel thought for a moment. Then he smiled. We don't need to jump. We can swing. Mira followed his gaze and saw a thick vine hanging above the trench. Other teams ignored it, but Daniel walked over and tested its strength. Hold on tight, he said, offering his hand. Mira hesitated, then grabbed it. Together, they swung across. The movement was smooth, and for a moment, Mira felt almost weightless. They landed on the other side without trouble. Mira looked at Daniel in surprise. That was clever. Daniel winked. See, we're not so bad. The third challenge. The energy barriers. Ahead of them, glowing blue barriers pulsed with energy. The teams had to move through them without getting hit. The problem: the barriers moved unpredictably. Some teams tried to rush through but got zapped, forcing them to restart. Others waited too long, wasting precious time. Mira narrowed her eyes. She noticed a pattern. The barriers flickered for a fraction of a second before shifting. I think I can time it, she said. Daniel nodded. I'll follow your lead. Mira watched carefully, counting in her head. Then, at the perfect moment, she stepped forward. The barrier moved just as she predicted, creating a small opening. She slipped through, and Daniel followed immediately. One by one, they passed the barriers without a single mistake. When they reached the end, Daniel let out a low whistle. That was amazing. Mira felt a small spark of pride. I just noticed the pattern. Daniel gave her a thumbs up. Good eye. The final challenge, the shifting platforms. The last challenge was the hardest. Floating platforms moved unpredictably, spinning and shifting in midair. One wrong step could send them falling. Mira's heart pounded. I don't know if I can do this. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. We'll take it one step at a time. They stepped onto the first platform. It wobbled under their weight. Mira took a deep breath and steadied herself. As they moved forward, she noticed that the platforms followed a rhythm. One would tilt right before another became steady. I see the pattern, she said quickly. Follow my steps exactly. Daniel nodded without hesitation. He trusted her. Step by step, they moved forward. Mira called out the timing, and Daniel followed without question. Finally, they reached the last platform. With one final jump, they landed safely on the other side. They had done it. Victory and reflection. Mira couldn't believe it. They had finished the trial together. The instructor announced their success, and Mira saw that many teams had failed. Even the strongest warriors had struggled. Yet, she and Daniel, the most unlikely pair, had completed the course. As they walked back, Mira looked at Daniel. You trusted me. Daniel smiled. Of course. I chose you for a reason. Mira felt something shift inside her. For the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, Daniel's choice wasn't a mistake. Maybe she was special, and she wanted to prove it. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the academy's training field. The recruits stood in formation, waiting for their next challenge. The excitement from yesterday's trial still lingered in the air. Some teams had passed, some had failed, but every pair had learned something about each other. Mira stood beside Daniel, her thoughts still replaying the moment when they had completed the obstacle run. She had expected to fail, but somehow they had succeeded. And for the first time, she felt like she had contributed something meaningful. She stole a quick glance at Daniel. He looked as calm as ever, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the horizon as if he had no worries at all. Mira didn't understand how he could be so confident all the time. Before she could think more, the head instructor stepped forward. His deep voice broke the morning silence. Today we begin the navigation test. Each team will be dropped in an unknown location. Your goal is simple. Find your way back to the academy. Mira frowned. That didn't sound too bad. But then the instructor continued. You will have no technology, no maps, and no external help. The environment will challenge you. Some of you will face extreme heat, others will be trapped in dense fog, and some might even encounter wild creatures. You must rely on your partner's skills. This is a test of teamwork and survival. Mira's stomach tightened. She had never been in a survival situation before. She was good at observing things, yes, but what if they got lost? What if she became a burden to Daniel? She didn't have time to worry. Moments later, teams were led to separate transport pods. Daniel and Mira entered theirs, and within minutes, the doors closed, and they were launched into the unknown. Lost in the mist. When the pod landed, the doors slid open, revealing their surroundings. A thick, silver mist covered everything, making it difficult to see more than a few steps ahead. The air was cool and damp, and the ground felt uneven beneath their feet. Mira hesitated. Where are we? Daniel stepped out, looking around. Some kind of forest, I think, but we won't know for sure until the mist clears. Mira took a deep breath. She could hear distant sounds, small creatures moving in the undergrowth, the rustling of leaves. There was no sign of danger, but the mist made everything feel eerie. Daniel stretched. All right, first step, figuring out which way to go. Mira frowned. We don't have a compass or a map. How do we know which direction is the academy? Daniel looked up. The suns. Mira followed his gaze. The twin suns were faint through the mist, but their light was still visible. In the academy, the suns always rose from the east and set in the west, Daniel explained. If we follow their movement, we can figure out which way to go. Mira was impressed. She had never thought about something so simple yet effective. They started walking, carefully stepping over roots and fallen branches. The mist made it difficult to see too far ahead, but they kept moving. A dangerous path. Hours passed, and the journey became more difficult. The forest was full of unexpected obstacles, twisted vines that blocked their path, deep streams they had to cross, and patches of uneven ground that made walking dangerous. Mira felt her energy draining. She wasn't used to physical challenges like this. She stumbled over a root, barely catching herself. Daniel noticed. Want to take a break? Mira shook her head. We can't waste time. Daniel grinned. Smart, but exhausting yourself won't help either. Let's rest for 5 minutes. Mira hesitated, then nodded. They found a large rock to sit on. As they rested, Mira's sharp eyes caught something. Small, deep marks on the ground. Footprints. She leaned forward, studying them. The shape was unfamiliar. Daniel, she whispered. We're not alone. Daniel followed her gaze. His relaxed expression became serious. Those tracks, they're fresh. Mira's heart pounded. Could it be another team? Daniel shook his head. Too big. And look at the pattern. It walks on 4 legs, but the claw marks suggest it's a predator. Mira swallowed hard. They had avoided danger so far, but now something was nearby. A hidden strength. The sound of movement echoed through the mist. A low growl. Leaves rustled. Mira's breath caught. It's coming. Daniel stood slowly. We need to move. Before he could finish, a shape emerged from the fog. It was large, moving low to the ground, its glowing yellow eyes fixed on them. Its dark fur blended with the mist, making it hard to see its full form. Mira's mind raced. Running blindly in the mist could be dangerous. Fighting was not an option. They had no weapons. Then something clicked in her mind. She took a deep breath and whispered, "Stay still." Daniel gave her a questioning look but didn't argue. He trusted her. Mira closed her eyes, listening carefully. She remembered reading about creatures that hunted in the mist. Some species used movement to track their prey. If they stayed completely still, they might go unnoticed. The growl grew louder. The creature stepped closer. Mira could feel its presence, just a few feet away. Her body screamed at her to run, but she forced herself to stay still. A long silence stretched between them. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature huffed and turned away, disappearing into the fog. Mira exhaled, her body shaking. Daniel finally moved, looking at her with admiration. That was incredible. Mira swallowed. I just noticed its behavior. Daniel smiled. You saved us. For a moment, Mira didn't know how to respond. But deep inside, something felt different. She had made the right call. She had protected them. Maybe she wasn't as weak as she had always believed. She stood up, determination growing inside her. Let's keep going. Daniel nodded, his grin widening. Now you're thinking like a leader. Mira didn't reply, but for the first time, she didn't doubt herself. She wasn't just following Daniel anymore. They were working together, and she was ready for whatever came next. The mist had started to thin, but the forest was still full of shadows. Mira and Daniel walked carefully, stepping over thick roots and fallen branches. The encounter with the creature had left them both alert, their senses sharp. Mira felt different now. She wasn't just following Daniel anymore. She was helping. She had saved them. And for the first time, she believed she could truly be useful. As they walked, She studied their surroundings. The trees here were taller, their leaves darker. A strange scent lingered in the air, something old and forgotten. Daniel noticed it too. This place feels different. Mira nodded, like no one has walked here for a long time. They kept moving, following the position of the twin suns. The ground became uneven, and soon they reached the edge of a cliff. Below them stretched a deep valley, covered in mist. A narrow bridge of stone connected both sides. Daniel whistled. "Looks risky." Mira examined the bridge. It was old, with cracks running along its surface. "We have no choice," she said. "The other way could take hours." Daniel grinned. "All right, let's be careful." They stepped onto the bridge. It was surprisingly sturdy, but the wind had picked up, making the crossing more difficult. Halfway across, Mira suddenly froze. Something felt wrong. "Wait," she whispered. Daniel stopped instantly. "What is it?" Mira knelt down and touched the stone. It was warm. Too warm. "This bridge isn't just old," she murmured. "It's unstable." Daniel frowned. "Then we better move fast." They quickened their steps, but just as they reached the last few feet, the bridge shook. A deep rumble echoed through the valley, and cracks spread rapidly across the stone. Mira's heart pounded. "Jump!" They both leaped as the bridge collapsed behind them, the broken pieces falling into the mist below. They landed hard on the other side, rolling on the ground. Daniel let out a breath. That was close. Mira sat up, still shaken. Too close. She turned to look ahead and froze. There, hidden between the trees, was something unexpected. A structure, ancient and covered in vines, its surface cracked with age. It looked like a small temple, built from dark stone, its entrance shaped like an archway. Symbols were carved into its walls, glowing faintly. Daniel stared. This wasn't on the Academy's maps. Mira swallowed. Then maybe we weren't meant to find it. A forgotten secret. Curiosity burned in Mira's mind. What was this place? And why did it feel so familiar? Daniel dusted himself off. Should we check it out? Mira hesitated. The Academy's task was to return, not explore. But something deep inside told her this was important. "Just a quick look," she said finally. They stepped inside. The air was cool, and the glow from the symbols provided dim light. The structure wasn't large, just a single chamber with a raised platform in the center. Mira ran her fingers over the carvings on the wall. The language was old, but somehow she understood it. Daniel watched her. "You can read it." Mira blinked. "I think so." The words told a story, a warning. The Watchers of the Mist must never be disturbed. They guard the lost knowledge, waiting for the worthy to return. Beware the call of the forgotten ones. A chill ran down Mira's spine. This place is not just a ruin. It's a message. Daniel's expression turned serious. What kind of knowledge were they hiding? Before Mira could answer, the ground beneath them shook. A deep hum filled the air, and the glowing symbols brightened. Mira's breath caught. "We need to leave." Daniel didn't argue. They ran back outside just as a low roar rumbled through the valley. The mist moved unnaturally, swirling faster. Something was waking up. The race against time. Mira and Daniel sprinted through the forest, dodging low branches and uneven ground. The hum from the ruins didn't fade. It followed them, growing louder. Mira's mind raced. Had they triggered something? Had they activated something that was meant to stay hidden? Daniel glanced at her. "Which way?" Mira took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. The twin suns were lower now, their position telling her the direction. "West," she called. "We need to keep going west." They ran faster. The wind picked up, carrying whispers, voices that weren't theirs. Daniel gritted his teeth. This is definitely not normal. The Academy's protective walls had to be close. They had been traveling for hours. Mira pushed herself harder, ignoring the burning in her legs. Then, finally, a familiar sight. Through the trees, the academy's outer gates came into view. Mira almost collapsed with relief. We made it. But just as they neared the entrance, the roar came again, deeper this time. The mist behind them thickened, forming a shape, something vast, something unseen. The ground trembled. A shadow moved within the mist, too large, too fast. Daniel grabbed Mira's wrist. Go. They dashed through the gates just as a barrier activated, a pulse of energy pushing the mist back. The unseen presence let out a low, rumbling growl, but it did not cross. Silence. Mira and Daniel stood there, breathing hard, watching as the mist slowly faded back into the valley. The danger was gone. For now. Unanswered questions. They were safe, but Mira couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. That was different. Mira nodded. The mission was about navigation, but we found something else. Daniel gave her a sideways glance. And I think you already knew something was out there. Mira hesitated. I didn't know, but I felt it. Daniel smiled. Then maybe you were meant to find it. Mira looked back at the valley. The mist had returned to normal, hiding whatever was inside. But the warning in the ruins still echoed in her mind. Beware the call of the forgotten ones. She didn't know what it meant. Not yet. But she was sure of one thing. This wasn't over. The academy's walls stood tall behind Mira and Daniel, shielding them from the eerie mist beyond. The strange whispers had faded, but the feeling of something watching them still lingered in the air. Mira's heart was still racing. They had made it back safely, but their journey had left too many questions unanswered. Daniel dusted off his uniform, looking back at the forest. Well, that was more than just a simple test. Mira nodded. We weren't supposed to find that place. Before they could talk more, the main gate opened, and an instructor approached. His sharp eyes scanned them both. You completed the trial. Mira and Daniel straightened. The instructor continued. But you were delayed. Explain. Mira hesitated. Should they tell the truth? Would the academy believe them? Daniel spoke first. We faced unexpected obstacles. The mist was stronger than expected. That was partially true, but Mira could tell Daniel was holding back on purpose. The instructor studied them for a long moment, then nodded. Understood. You both passed the test. Get some rest. The next challenge begins tomorrow. With that, he turned and walked away. Mira let out a quiet breath. Why didn't you tell him about the ruins? Daniel shrugged. Because I don't trust them yet. Mira frowned. The academy. Daniel's expression grew serious. Think about it. If the academy knew about that place, why wasn't it on the maps? Why send us into the mist without warning? Mira had no answer. She had always believed the academy was there to train and protect them. But now, she wasn't so sure. A night of questions. That night, Mira lay awake in her dorm, staring at the ceiling. The warning on the ruins kept repeating in her mind. The watchers of the mist must never be disturbed. Why? What were they guarding? She turned on her side. Frustrated. She needed answers. Making a decision, she slipped out of bed and left her room. The academy's hallways were quiet. The lights dimmed. Most students were asleep. Mira moved carefully, heading toward the library. If the instructors wouldn't tell them the truth, maybe the academy's records would. When she reached the library, she wasn't surprised to find Daniel already there. He smirked. Knew you couldn't sleep either. Mira rolled her eyes but felt relieved. You're looking for answers too. Daniel nodded. Something about today doesn't sit right. If there's information on that place, it has to be here. They began searching, flipping through old records and maps. But something was wrong. The academy had thousands of years of history recorded. Documents about past recruits, old battles, even details on different planets. But there was nothing about the Mist Valley. Mira frowned. How can there be no records? The ruins were ancient. The Academy should know about them. Daniel sighed, leaning back. That means one of two things. Either they never explored that area, which seems unlikely, or they erased the information on purpose. Mira's hands tightened around the book she was holding. The second possibility was far more troubling. Before she could reply, a noise made them both freeze. Footsteps. Mira quickly put the book back on the shelf. Daniel did the same. They slipped into the shadows just as a figure entered the library. It was the head instructor. He walked slowly, his sharp eyes scanning the room as if searching for something. Then, after a long moment, he turned and left. Mira let out a quiet breath. That was close. Daniel's expression was serious. I think they know we found something. Mira shivered. They weren't just searching for answers anymore. Now, they were being watched. A mysterious warning. The next morning, the academy felt different. The instructors seemed more alert, their gazes sharper. Mira and Daniel kept to themselves, acting normal. But inside, Mira's mind was spinning. She didn't have to wait long for more strange events. During lunch, a small note was slipped under her plate. Mira's eyes widened. She quickly grabbed it before anyone noticed. Daniel leaned closer. What is it? Mira unfolded the paper. The message was short but clear. Meet me at the old training hall. Come alone. There was no name. Mira's pulse quickened. Was it a trap? A warning? Or a chance to get the truth? Daniel frowned. You're not actually thinking of going, are you? Mira hesitated. We need answers. Daniel sighed. Then I'm coming with you. Mira shook her head. The note said alone. If they see both of us, they might not talk. Daniel didn't like it, but after a moment, he nodded. Fine, but I'll be nearby. Mira took a deep breath. It was time to take a risk. The meeting. That evening, Mira slipped away to the old training hall. It was abandoned, the lights flickering weakly. A shadow moved near the entrance. Mira tensed. Who's there? A hooded figure stepped forward. A young woman with piercing green eyes. Mira didn't recognize her, but something about her felt familiar. The woman spoke in a low voice. You found the ruins. Mira's breath caught. You know about them. The woman nodded. And now, the academy is watching you. You need to leave this place before it's too late. Mira's heart pounded. Why? What is the academy hiding? The woman hesitated, then whispered. The Mist Valley was once part of an ancient civilization. A powerful one. The academy erased their existence. If they learn you know the truth, you'll be in danger. Mira's mind raced. Why would they erase history? The woman's eyes darkened. Because some knowledge is too powerful, and those who seek it disappear. A chill ran down Mira's spine. Before she could ask more, the woman handed her a small device. This will show you what they don't want you to see. But be careful. Trust no one. Then, before Mira could stop her, the woman vanished into the night. Mira stared at the device in her hands, her fingers trembling. She had come looking for answers. But now she had even more questions, and the academy was hiding secrets far bigger than she had ever imagined. Mira stood alone in the dim light of the old training hall, her fingers tightening around the small device the mysterious woman had given her. Her heart pounded. She had wanted answers, but now she had something much more dangerous, the forbidden secret. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Mira's breath caught. Was someone coming? Was she already being followed? She quickly hid the device inside her pocket and pressed herself against the wall, staying in the shadows. The footsteps slowed, then stopped. Silence. After a long moment, they moved away. Mira let out a quiet breath, then turned and slipped out of the hall. She needed to find Daniel. A risky decision. Back in their dormitory, Daniel was waiting for her, arms crossed. Took you long enough, he said, his voice low. I was about to go after you. Mira ignored his frustration and pulled out the device. Look at this. Daniel's eyes widened. What is it? Mira hesitated. I don't know yet, but she said it will show us what the Academy is hiding. Daniel frowned. And you trust her? I don't know if I trust her, Mira admitted. But I do know the Academy is keeping secrets, and I want the truth. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. All right, let's see what this thing does. They moved to the corner of the room, away from the door and windows. Mira pressed a small button on the side of the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a faint blue light flickered, and a holographic projection appeared before them. The forbidden knowledge. The projection showed an ancient map, a map of their planet, but it looked different. Cities that didn't exist today were marked. Strange symbols glowed along the edges. Then a voice, cold and distant, began speaking. This is the lost history of the Mist Valley. Before the Academy, before the current civilization, there was another. A great empire with knowledge beyond imagination. They controlled energy, time, and space itself. Mira and Daniel exchanged shocked glances. The voice continued. But power comes with danger. The empire fell, destroyed by its own discoveries. The Mist Valley was their last stronghold, where their greatest secret was hidden. It was never meant to be found again. The map zoomed in, showing the valley, the ruins, and something beneath them, a vast underground structure. The Academy erased this history. They feared what lay beneath the mist, but the Watchers still remain. And soon, they will awaken. The projection flickered, then disappeared. Silence filled the room. Mira swallowed hard. The Academy knows all of this, and they've been hiding it. Daniel ran a hand over his face. This is bigger than we thought. Mira nodded. And if the Watchers are real, if they wake up. Daniel finished her sentence. Everything will change. A dangerous choice. Mira took a deep breath, steadying herself. We need to go back. Daniel's eyes widened. Are you crazy? The mist almost killed us last time. Mira shook her head. This time, we'll be prepared. We need to find out what's beneath those ruins before the Academy stops us. Daniel hesitated, then sighed. I can't believe I'm saying this, but you're right. Mira felt a spark of determination. She knew this was risky, but she had started this journey looking for answers, and now she was too close to stop. Escape from the Academy. Getting out of the Academy without being noticed was not easy. Security had increased, and instructors were watching them more closely. But Mira had learned the Academy's patterns. She knew the blind spots in the surveillance, the times when guards changed shifts. Late at night, Mira and Daniel, dressed in dark clothes, and moved carefully through the Academy halls. They stayed in the shadows, avoiding the patrols. When they reached the outer wall, Daniel pulled out a small climbing device, a simple tool used for training. He grinned. Good thing I borrowed this. Mira rolled her eyes but smiled. Just don't drop it. They climbed the wall quickly and jumped down on the other side. They were out. But the real danger was just beginning. Return to the mist. The forest felt different this time. The mist was thicker, swirling unnaturally, as if it knew they had returned. Mira took a steady breath. Stay close. Daniel nodded. They moved carefully, retracing their steps from before. The ruins came into view, dark and silent. Mira placed a hand on the stone wall, remembering the warning. The Watchers must never be disturbed. But they had already started something. And now, there was no turning back. A shocking discovery. They entered the ruins, moving toward the center where the carvings had glowed before. But something was different. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Daniel cursed. What's happening? Mira's heart pounded. The Watchers. They're waking up. Suddenly, the ground cracked, revealing a hidden staircase leading downward. A deep hum vibrated through the air, ancient energy stirring. Mira and Daniel exchanged a look. "We go together," Daniel said. Mira nodded. "Together." And with that, they stepped into the darkness, descending toward the truth that had been hidden for centuries. Mira and Daniel moved cautiously down the ancient stone staircase. The air grew colder with every step. A soft hum vibrated through the walls, pulsing like a heartbeat. The deeper they went, the stronger the feeling of being watched became. Daniel whispered, "Are you sure we should be doing this?" Mira swallowed her fear. "We've come too far to stop now." They reached the bottom of the stairs and found themselves in a vast underground chamber. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls. The mist from above had seeped inside, swirling around their feet. At the center of the chamber stood a massive stone door covered in carvings. It was different from anything they had ever seen, both beautiful and terrifying. Daniel ran his fingers over the symbols. "This must be the entrance to whatever is hidden here." Mira pulled out the device the mysterious woman had given her. The moment she turned it on, the carvings lit up, responding to the energy. Then the door moved. Mira and Daniel exchanged a look. "No turning back now," Daniel muttered. Mira took a deep breath. "Let's go." The Forgotten City. Mira whispered in awe. This is the lost civilization." Daniel stared. "It's still standing, after all this time." As they walked deeper into the city, they noticed something unsettling. Statues lined the streets, shaped like tall humanoid figures with elongated heads and glowing eyes. Mira stopped in front of one. "These aren't statues." Daniel looked closer. His face paled. "They're frozen." The figures weren't carved from stone. They looked like they had been trapped in time, caught in the middle of movement. Mira shuddered. What could have done this? Before Daniel could answer, the air shifted. A deep, whispering voice filled the chamber. "Who dares disturb the Watchers?" Mira and Daniel spun around. The mist thickened, swirling into a shape, a towering, shadowy figure with glowing white eyes. The Watchers awaken. Mira's breath caught. This was it. The Watchers were real. The figure loomed over them, its voice echoing in their minds. "You have entered sacred ground. Why have you come?" Mira steadied herself. "We seek the truth. The Academy erased your history. We need to know why." Silence. Then the Watcher spoke again. "The Academy feared our knowledge. They wished to control it. They sealed this place. But the time of silence is over." The city trembled. More figures emerged from the mist. More Watchers, their eyes glowing with ancient power. Daniel took a step back. "Mira, I think we just started something big." The first Watcher gazed at them. "You are not like the others. You do not seek to hide the past. You seek to learn." Mira swallowed. "Yes." The Watcher's eyes gleamed. "Then you must choose. Leave now, forget what you have seen, or take the knowledge and become part of history." Mira's heart pounded. This was the moment. She looked at Daniel. "If we leave, the Academy will keep controlling the truth." Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "Then we take the knowledge." The Watchers stepped forward, surrounding them. Energy pulsed through the air. "Then you shall see." The truth revealed. A blinding light engulfed them. Mira felt herself pulled into a vision. She saw the past unfold before her eyes. She saw the ancient civilization at its peak, a world of limitless energy, where people lived in harmony with technology beyond imagination. Then she saw their downfall. The knowledge they had discovered was too powerful. It had drawn the attention of something greater, something that could not be controlled. To stop destruction, the Watchers had sealed themselves away, freezing time itself to protect their secrets. And the Academy? They had feared the Watchers' return. They had erased history to keep their power. Mira gasped as the vision ended. She staggered back, her mind spinning. Daniel caught her. "What did you see?" Mira took a shaky breath. "The Academy was never protecting us. They were protecting themselves. A new beginning. The Watchers watched them in silence. You now hold the truth. What will you do? Mira squared her shoulders. We share it. The people deserve to know. Daniel nodded. It's time for change. The Watchers seemed to consider this. Then, slowly, they bowed their heads. Then go. And remember, knowledge is power. But it is also responsibility. The mist swirled again, and before Mira and Daniel knew it, they were standing outside the ruins once more. The city was hidden. The Watchers were gone. But the truth remained. Mira and Daniel exchanged a look. The academy would try to stop them, but they had seen too much. And now, the world would know what had been forgotten.